Adorama TV presents Digital Photography One-on-One, where we answer your questions. Here's your host, Mark Wallace.
Hi everybody, welcome to this week's episode of Digital Photography One-on-One. Well, this week we're going to talk about this old camera. It's one of my very first cameras and I used to use it to make stop action films, and that's what our question is about this week. It actually comes from three people, Mears, Ian, and Arvind, and they asked, how do I make time-lapse videos on my DSLR? Well, that's a great question, everybody. Well, back in the olden days, if you're going to make a stop-action or time-lapse movie, what you'd have to do is you'd have your film camera, your movie camera, and you would shoot a frame one at a time. And so luckily, nowadays, it's a little bit easier than that because we can automate things, but the principles are exactly the same. Now, the first thing we need to understand is this thing called frames per second or frame rate. And so let me go through three of the most common frame rates. So the first one is 60 frames per second. And that's FPS, that stands for frames per second. And 60 frames per second is normally what you would use for video. It's a very common format. Another really common format is 30 frames per second. And 30 frames per second is what YouTube uses, and a lot of traditional videos use 30 frames per second as well. Back in the olden days, when we were watching films in movie theaters, they were shot at 24 frames per second, and that's traditionally, if you want that real film look, you'll shoot everything at 24 frames per second. And all of these are also known as frame rates. And so that's really important to understand, because when you're making your stop action or time-lapse video, you need to know how many frames that you have per second so you know how to time everything. Now, we can do all kinds of really nice things. We can have some time blending fun by changing out how we shoot and how that relates to our frame rate. So let's talk about a few of those. We can do that by shooting faster than our frame rate, and our frame rate is what we refer to as real time. So if we were shooting at 30 frames per second and we shot 1 second of video, but we shot it at 1,000 frames per second, well, we're shooting faster than real time, and so when we show that back in real time, well, that 1,000 frames is going to take several seconds, and so it's going to be really slow motion. So if you're a fan of Mythbusters, you know about their high-speed cameras and how they slow everything down by shooting really fast. Well, you can do the opposite of that, and if you shoot slower than real time, well, that makes everything go really, really fast. So you might shoot 1 frame per hour and shoot like the building of some giant ballpark or something, and you're shooting over several weeks. Well, when you put that all together, you can have 24 hours takes up only a second if you're doing 24 frames per second, and so things go really, really fast. So you can change the feel of how things move, either making things go slow or making things go fast. And you can also do something that's really fun, and you can shoot things in real time, so you try to emulate real motion. Now, we do that if you're shooting something like an old King Kong movie, and you want King Kong to look like he's moving in real time, and so you would try to figure out how long it takes for him to get his hand from here to here in real life, and then you would try how many frames that is, and then do that one shot at a time, and you do that fast enough, and King Kong looks like he's moving along in real time, just like we planned. So that's how all those old movies were made, and that's really what I love to do. Well, there are really three types of shooting that we can do, and we can break it down like this. There is time-lapse photography. Now, these videos are when we record things at regular intervals. So we set up our camera and we tell our camera, I want you to take a picture once every second or once every hour or day or whatever. And then we take all of those and we stick them together in some kind of post-production software and we play it back. That's a time-lapse video. The second kind of video is called stop action. It's a little bit different. So instead of telling our camera to shoot every single second on the second or hour on the hour, what we're doing is we're manipulating something like King Kong or some kind of doll or some kind of animation, and we might take an hour or two and then take 1 frame and then do more manipulation and take 1 frame. But when we play it back, we want it to look like it's moving in real time. And so that's what traditional stop action is, and that's like Wallace and Gromit or King Kong or old Star Wars special effects. That's stop action video making. Okay, and then there's another thing that we can do, and this is called variable frame rate shooting. And the fun of this is you can take and you can shoot things faster than real time and slower than real time all at the same time, and then bend time. And so this is, you see this all the time in action movies where it's called a ramp up, where you have, or time ramping, where you'll have a fist or something go really fast and then it'll slow way down and then punch somebody in the face and you see everything fly. And so action movies use this all kinds of different ways. And if you're, again, a Discovery Channel fan like I am, you can see this kind of stuff in Mythbusters and other films on television. So I really love variable frame rates. So let me give you some real examples of this. The first two are little movies that I made on the last day, and then one is from Matt Hill, who is a phenomenal artist. So this first one here is one I shot out of my hotel room, and it's just a bunch of cars moving. This looks a little bit like a security camera, but it's a time-lapse video. So I told my camera to shoot one picture every second, and then I took all that and put it in Final Cut, and this is the little video that came out of that. Now the second type of filmmaking we can do is actual stop action. So I got a little wooden posing guy from an art store, and we made him do some exercises. So there he are, falling over. So he's falling over there, and then he's going, oh, I blew it, and then he bows. And so it's probably one of the worst stop action movies ever, but I had a lot of fun making it. So here's our little wooden guy. Now, if you really want to see some work that is amazing, you would look at something like this. This is called Available Night, and it was created by Matt Hill. And this is when you take all that different, the frame rates, and you speed it up and slow it down and play it forwards and backwards and do all kinds of stuff. And that's how Matt Hill created this. We actually have a video on our How'd They Do That episodes that goes into great detail on how Matt created this video. It's pretty darn cool. So how do you do this for yourself? Well, we're going to actually create some videos and show you how to make them here in the studio. And to do this at home, you need a few things. The first thing you need is you have to have a camera. Now the groovy thing is you don't have to have any kind of special camera. It can be a point and shoot camera, or it can be a really high-end camera. Obviously you have more options with a higher end camera, but any camera will work as long as it will take a picture. Now the second thing you need, absolutely you have to have some kind of video editing software. And there are all kinds of different packages that you can use. We used Final Cut. Adobe Premiere Pro is a very, very popular editing software, but there's Final Cut Elements. There is Adobe Premiere Elements, I believe that's the other one. And then there's also iStop Motion, which is made specifically for doing stop motion animation. And there's all kinds of different packages out there. And so you need to choose one of those, and you can't do this without some kind of post-production software. Now there's some advanced tools that you can use as well. The one that comes to mind the very first is a tripod. You have a lot more options if you have a tripod. Specifically if you're doing stop action, you have to have a tripod. If you're doing stuff like Matt Hill, he didn't use a tripod with that, so we didn't put that in the absolute must-have list. The other thing you need is some kind of cable release. Now a cable release that's programmable is going to allow you to tell your camera to take pictures at certain intervals, and if you're just doing stop action, it's going to make sure that you don't shake your camera. Or you can use some remote shooting software, and this is software that allows you to control your camera from your computer. And most brands come pre-packaged with a disc that has some kind of remote shooting software. So that's really nice that you can get this for free in most cases. Now the workflow for doing this is identical no matter what camera or what software. And the way you do this is the very first thing you do is you shoot your images. Once you're done, you have to prep your images for video. So they won't be ready to go to a video. You have to do some modifications. So you have to do that in some kind of software. And then the last thing is you have to edit the video. The nice thing, some of these video editing software packages will allow you to do both of those things at the same time. And once that's done, then you enjoy your movie with some popcorn. All right, so now that you know all of the basics, we're actually going to go to the studio. We're going to make 2 videos and show you how to do everything from shooting to editing, and then finally we're going to enjoy the videos. All right, so we're going to start out with our stop action movie, and what I've done here is I have a Nikon D3S and a cable release, and then I have our little guy over here. This is just something I got from an art store, and I'm going to animate him. And what we're doing is we're going to shoot 4 frames per second, so he'll actually be a little bit choppy. That's okay. If I wanted to shoot this exactly 24 frames per second, it would take a long, long time, and I don't have that much time. But all I'm going to be doing is basically setting him up, getting him in position, and then once I have him in position, I will be clicking this cable release to take a shot. I have this camera set to manual mode because I don't want my exposure to change at all while we're doing this. I don't want the luminance of the video to go up or down. I want it to be exactly the same. And then the other thing, I've also set this to manual focus. So I've looked through here, I've set it so it's perfectly in focus. And that way I can have our little man walk out of focus if I want to, and it looks a little bit more realistic. And so the other thing we're going to do here is I've added a softbox here to add a little bit more drama to our little wooden man. And that's something that's not required, but I sort of want to use it. And so we are about to start shooting. So I'm going to start animating the little wooden guy. All right, so we turn off the ambient lights, and what I'm doing here is I'm making sure my focus is correct, and then also I'm making sure that I frame this a little bit wide, because I'm going to be cropping these, because the video is a 16:9 aspect ratio, and a camera shoots 4:3, so I need to make sure that I can crop off the top and bottom of the image. So I'm making sure I have a little bit of room below our little wooden man's feet and above his head, and also his arms are going to be going above his head, so I have to make sure I plan for that. The other thing that I'm using is this stuff. It's called Bard's Tacky Wax, and what it allows me to do is stick him to the table. And this stuff is great. It's used for shooting jewelry and any kind of product stuff that's really small that you want to make sure that you don't move around. If I open this up, you can just see that this has just got a bunch of wax in there, and you can just sort of scrape that out and stick it on your product table, or in this case, you can stick it to the guy's feet, and he will stick to the to the table, and that way he won't fall over. So that's a little trick that we're using for this. All right, so I'm shooting at, the video is going to be 24 frames per second, and that means I have 4 frames per second because I'm bringing these in at 6 frames each. And so I have to remember that when I have him move around, I only have 4 movements per second, so I got to move him sort of in big motions. And so we'll sort of stick close to that and see how it works out. All right, here he goes. Okay, so that's our stop action aerobics. It's probably the worst possible stop action ever invented, but I had to get something done. So our little guy is done doing his aerobics. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go into the studio and do a time-lapse video, and then we'll wrap all that stuff together and show you how to do all the post-production work. So let's head into the studio really fast. Okay, now what we're going to do is a different type of stop action movie. This is actually called a time-lapse video, and the difference is in the stop action we were shooting, repositioning our little figure, and then shooting again, and we were calculating how many frames we would need per second to make the motion realistic. With a time-lapse video, what we're doing is we're telling our camera to take pictures at a set duration. So it could be once per second, it could be twice per second, it could be once per hour, maybe once per day, depending on what you want to shoot. So what we're going to be doing is I'm going to be telling my camera to take a picture 1 time every single second. And to do that, I'm using this remote trigger. This is a cable release, and it's the Nikon MC36, and it's programmable, so I can do all kinds of things. And one of the things I can do with it is to tell my camera to take a picture once every second, or whatever duration I want that to be. Now you can get these for every brand of camera, or you can use a computer, and you can attach your camera to your computer and then use the software that shipped with your camera to do this time-lapse video. And so we're going to stick with this. The nice thing about these guys is that you can use them outside. They don't take as much power, and they're a little bit more weather resistant than a laptop. So we're going to stick with this guy. Now what I've had it set up to do is I have the timer set so that it takes a picture once every second for infinity. I've set my camera to manual mode, and I've already metered the background, so I know that it's going to take a picture. This is at 2.8 is the aperture setting, and my shutter speed is 200, so I have nice crystal clear images. And then I've already set the focus. I've put my lens on manual focus. That way the camera's not going to try to focus every time, and I'm just going to point this at the studio, and it's focused, it's nice and good. And then I'm going to start the timer, and now my camera is shooting, and I need to clean the studio. All right, well now that all the shooting is done, we need to do 2 things. The first is we need to prepare the images for editing in a video editing software, and then we need to go into our video editing software and edit the video. Now, a disclaimer, you can do this with all different types of software. I'm going to be using Lightroom and Final Cut Studio, but you could use all kinds of different editing applications to do this, and we'll mention some of those at the end of the show. So let's dive into Lightroom and then go right on to Final Cut Studio. Okay, let's start out in Lightroom. What I've done is I've imported all the photos that we shot today, as well as some of the photos I shot in Los Angeles last week of the intersection. That's the video that I showed you in the introduction of this video. Now what I've done is I've taken these and I've broken them up into some collections. And so this one is the fast shutter speed I used on the intersection, so I could really freeze the cars moving around. And this has already been processed, and I used that in the video, again, that I showed you at the beginning of this video today. This is another one. This is a bunch of really slow shutter speeds. So I wanted to see these cars zipping in and out here with the lights blurred. So these have not been processed, but I could if I'd like to. And then what I did was I added all the images of us cleaning the studio. So those are in here. These are ready to be processed. And then I have this little wooden guy exercising, and that's what we created earlier. And I'm just scrolling through these with my mouse. That's how I'm making those move. It's not a movie. And then the woodman falling, that's the video that we created earlier that I showed you again. So let's work first on this woodman exercising. And what we'll need to do here is we need to prepare these images for editing in our video application. And there's a couple things we need to do. We need to crop the images so that the aspect ratio is correct. And then we need to resize the images so that they can quickly be edited in our application. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go over to the Develop module in Lightroom. And again, you could do this in Bridge, you could do this in Aperture, you can do this in any number of applications. We're going to be using Lightroom because it's the application that I use for post-processing and doing all my bulk actions. So the very first thing I want to do is go to this crop tool, and by default your image comes out of the camera in a 2:3 or 4:6 aspect ratio. And that's not the aspect ratio of the movie that we want to make. The movie we want to make is a 16:9 aspect ratio. So it's long and thin, not square like a 2:3. So I can use my crop tool to crop this at a 16:9 aspect ratio, and you can see that I'll make this a little bit bigger here. It's chopping off the top and bottom of this image. Now to get that 16:9 aspect ratio, what I did was I went over here to this aspect ratio and I entered a custom value of 16:9. So I just typed that in, 16:9. I've already got that in there, so I don't need to do that right now. And I made sure that I framed this so that the guy would fall right inside this 16:9 window, right in the middle. So I'm going to accept this crop, and that's changed the aspect ratio. The next thing I want to do is I want to desaturate this a little bit because I like how he's lit from the side, and I sort of like him to be a little bit more black and white. And so I'll take the saturation down just a little bit, and then I'm going to take the contrast up a little bit, and then I'm going to take the clarity up a little bit to make him a little bit grainier. And there we go. So I like how that looks. Now I need to do that for every single picture that is in this sequence. And this is really where Lightroom shines because it does all this automated processing for us. So I'm going to go back to the library module, and I already have this first image selected. That's the one I just edited. And I want to select all the rest of these images. So I'm going to go to the very end, hit Shift, and click. Now everything is selected. And what I can do is I can apply the settings that I just made to the first image to all the images. So I'm going to go down to the very lower left-hand corner or right-hand corner and click Sync Settings. It's going to ask me which settings I want to sync. Well, I'm just going to go with the default, which is just sync everything. So I'm going to do that. And now Lightroom is going to go through and it's going to start chopping these down and desaturating. And now all of the images are ready to go. There's one more thing we need to do though. We need to take all these images, we need to resize them, and we need to put them into a folder. So once again, Lightroom really helps us to be able to do this. What I can do here is I can go down to this Publish Service, and what it does is it helps you automate things, and then you can save those for repeated automations. So I'm going to go down here, I'm going to click the plus, I'm going to go to my Publishing Manager, and I want to export these to my hard drive. So I'm going to go to Add, and it's going to ask which service. I'm going to say hard drive, and it's going to ask me for a name of this new service. And so I'm going to say, call this Woodman Exercising. Alright, I'll say Create. Now it's going to ask me how I want to export these. So I want to export these to a specific folder. It's on an external drive in a folder called Stills, and I want to put it in a subfolder called Woodman Exercising. There we go. Then I don't want to rename my files. I do want to convert them to JPEG, sRGB, very small color space. I want to keep them at high quality. And I want to resize the short edge to 720 pixels. The reason for that is I'm editing this at 720p. In other words, the height of these images should be 720 pixels high. If I was editing this in 1080p, it would be 1080 pixels high. So I'm going to keep it at 720p. So 720 pixels. P doesn't stand for pixels, by the way. It stands for progressive. The resolution is fine. It doesn't really matter for this application. I'm going to sharpen these for the screen, and I want to minimize the embedded metadata because I want these images to be really small. We don't need metadata in them, and that's good. So I'll hit save. Now I have this little thing down here called Woodman Exercising. And all I have to do is drag these over, and when I click on that, it says you have new photos to publish, and I will say publish. And it's going to go and it's going to save all of these images out to my hard drive. Okay, now that that's done, I can actually go over to my Finder, and I'll open up a Finder window here. And if I go down here to my stills, what I can do is I can say, here's my Woodman Exercising. And sure enough, there are all my images that I exported. All right, well, now that I've done all the prep on the images in Lightroom, I'm going to import those into Final Cut Studio. So let me show you how I do that. Okay, now we're in Final Cut Studio, and again, you can do this with all kinds of different types of software. The principles are the exact same thing, so make sure you pay attention to the principles, not so much the software that we're using. So what we're trying to do here is make sure that we have a bunch of images, and we're going to put them on a timeline, and we're going to play them in sequence. So if I zoom in on this, you can see that this is just a picture, followed by a picture, followed by a picture, followed by a picture, and they all have the same duration. Now, one of the tricks in Final Cut Studio is you can go in here to User Preferences, click on Editing, and you can click on Still Freeze Duration and choose a certain time duration. So I've set this to 3 frames, which is a really short duration. And the nice thing about that is when you import files in still images, they'll all come in a set duration, and so that's really what we want to do. So I've already set that up. I'll hit cancel. One note is if you do change this, you have to restart Final Cut for it to take effect. So if you change this, then you need to restart. So I'll hit cancel because I already set that up. What I want to do here is I want to create a new sequence, and a sequence is just a timeline, and I'm going to call this Woodman Exercising. Okay, now once that's set up, what I'll do is I need to import the Woodman Exercising files. So I actually go in here and I'll say import folder. Now again, this is going to be different based on what kind of software you use, but I've saved these to my stills folder, and I'm just going to click on Woodman Exercising and choose it. It's going to import all of those files. Then I can open that up. I can click the very first file. There's my first file of my wood guy exercising, and I'll go to the last file, and then I'll just drag these over here onto the timeline, and there you have it. It is on the timeline, and if I hit play, you can see that there's my little dude exercising. All right, looks great. So he's exercising, and I have my stop action all set to go, and then I can just render this out as a file by going out here and saying File, Export, QuickTime Movie. Now you do that differently in Premiere or whatever movie editing software you're using, but that's how we do it. It's really easy. I'll create another one, so I'll create a new sequence, and I'm going to create this studio cleaning, and I'll open that up, and then I'll go in here and I'll say import my folder, and it's going to be on my stills folder, and it's going to be studio cleaning. Once again, I'll import all of those, and it's importing. There's a lot more of these than the other files, so it takes a little bit longer. And once again, I'll select all of these, and oops, I hit caps lock instead of shift. So I'll select all of these, and I'll just drag them onto the timeline. It's going to stick them on there. And the reason this happens so quickly is because I preset the duration of each of these images, and that's really where you need time savings. And then you can watch and see how fast this goes. And if it's too fast or not fast enough, you can change the duration of all of these images. And so depending on your software, you might be able to click this, click on duration, and change the duration there from 3 frames to 4 frames or 6 frames or whatever you want to do.
and it'll batch process everything. And so I think I like 3 frames per second. I'll just give a little quick preview here. And yeah, that looks pretty good. So we'll keep it set to that, and our video is done. And that's how you do time-lapse and stop-action editing in post-production.
Well, there you have it, stop action videos and time-lapse videos all in one episode. We had a lot of fun making these. You can take a look. Here's our little guy exercising. I don't know anybody that exercises like this, but we had a lot of fun animating him. And then, of course, we went in and cleaned up the studio. So here we are doing our time-lapse video of us cleaning up the studio. Well, I really had fun doing this week, and I had an idea, and what I'd like you to do is take everything that I taught you today in this episode and put it into practice and make your own time-lapse or stop-action movie, and then I'd like you to send that to me. Just send me a link to your video at askmark@adorama.com. So put it on Vimeo or put it on YouTube, and then send me a link, again, to askmark@adorama.com. And I'm going to take the one that I think is the most interesting, and I'm going to feature it right here on Adorama TV. So you need to be prepared to talk about how you made your video, and you have to own all the copyright licenses, so don't put in music that you don't own. But if you do that, what we'll do is we'll feature you right here on Adorama TV. Well, remember, if you want to see every single episode of Digital Photography One-on-One, please subscribe to our YouTube channel or subscribe on iTunes. And if you have a question about photography, you can always send me those questions to askmark@adorama.com. Well, thanks for joining me. I'll see you again next week.
This episode is brought to you by Adorama TV. Visit the Adorama Learning Center, where you'll find photography tips and techniques, links to the gear used in this episode, and related videos. For all the latest photography, video, and computer gear, visit adorama.com. And the next time you're in New York City, visit our store, located on 18th Street between 5th and 6th Avenue.